Hello, hello. I am live on YouTube and on Instagram. I'm going to wait just a little bit as people are coming in. And if you are unable to connect at this time, I will be posting this on my YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see it later. And so if you are joining in on YouTube at a later time, thank you so much for coming. So just waiting until other people get onto this live feed. Hi, Stephanie. So good to see you. And on YouTube as well. I'd love to give you a shout out. So, and if you hear a little bit of noise throughout, it is a full house. So you'll probably hear some people walking and you probably know what that's like being at home as my husband's walking through with lunch. Well, thank you so much for joining. It is really cold outside. It is freezing. My hands are like so cold. But yeah, I'm going to get started. And so today's topic is about unwavering. Well, pretty much the whole month is about unwavering. I'm going to get into a little about what that is. And thank you so much if you're joining in, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube. I am going to be doing a teaching based off of the reading plan that was for this week. But if you have not started the reading plan yet, no worries. There is still time that you can download this free resource. And I'm just going to show you really quick what it looks like. And I made this smaller in order for it to fit in my notebook. But this is the reading plan. And then there's a prayer guide that goes along with it. And it makes it easy and simple in order to follow a plan for the month. And you can choose this month, next month, or whatever time in the year. It's up to you. And pretty much it's going into what this whole theme is about, unwavering. And so if you would like to have this free resource, just message me separately from this and send me your email so I can send you the link. I can get that to you. It is a blessing for me in order to get this out to you, and I'd love to just give this resource out to you. But let's get started into this unwavering theme. And so if you don't know what unwavering is, Merriam-Webster says that unwavering means steady, resolute, and constant. So it's someone who, it is an adjective. So you are describing, and this could be yourself. And we're going to get into this into the teaching later on. But there are men and women in the Bible that showed unwavering faith, which was amazing. And that it is possible to have unwavering faith no matter what we're going through, no matter what we're facing, and especially during this time where we're handling unexpected news. We're living this collectively, something we've never experienced before. And whether it's in this time or whatever situation you're going through, because this isn't going to be the last time that you're going to go through something difficult. Like Jesus said, you will have trouble in this world. As long as we're living, we're going to be going through challenges. We're going to face difficulties. But through all those things, God promises that He'll be with us, but that also that we can live or have unwavering faith. That means that no matter what is happening externally, internally, that we can have constant faith, that we can be steady, that we can be resolute. And what that means is no matter what is happening, I know that I know that I know that God is real, that God is true to his promises, that whatever God says he will do it. And there are things that can help us in order to have unwavering faith. And just in case if you're thinking, well, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a leader, I'm not, I don't have a title. Well, good. That is great. You don't have to have a title in order for you to have a relationship with God or for you to um, uh, access his benefits or listen to his voice, which we're getting into today. To be that man or woman of faith, it is to week number one. The affirmation to say this week is, I choose to listen to God. And see, you have a choice. You have a choice how you're going to respond to the situation around you. You have a choice how you're going to handle the circumstances. You have a choice how you're going to respond to the unexpected. You choose to listen to God. You choose to have unwavering faith. And this is about a day in and day out thing. It's not, okay, well, I received something and that's it for the rest of my life and I'm good. No, this is a lifelong journey. And when we look at the men and women in the Bible and we see their lives, and then, we see their name, that they are men and women of faith, in the moment, they didn't think that they were. They were going through the thick of it. They were going through hard times. They were going through difficulties. But it wasn't until afterwards that they were like, and not even from them, it's from people that read or heard about their lives or wrote about their lives and then gave them that title. These are men and women of faith. So just think about that in your life, that you don't have to have a title. You don't have to, be in certain leadership to think, well, that's when only God will speak to me, or that's only when I'll have a relationship with God. No, it's for you, and believing that. So, God, there are things that you can do. God has provided tools that you can use in order for you to have unwavering faith. And no matter what you go through, your faith does not have to change. Your faith does not have to waver. So in this week's reading plan, and again, if you have not read it yet, that's okay. You're kind of getting a message to this, so you can still download the 21-day reading plan, and all of this will be an accompaniment to what you're going to read and what God is going to say to you in your own time. So you can you can message me with your email for that resource. But let's go into what this reading has been. And if you have done it, I'd love to hear from you what you have learned. And if you have a question, put it in the comment section. I would love to answer any questions today. And Instagram has this nice little feature with like the question mark that at the bottom, so you can click on there and send a question or a suggestion or a comment that you would love to put on here. And so we first started out with the life of Abraham. And so if you haven't figured it out by now, the reading plan is designed for you to see 5 men of the Bible. Now, there's nothing wrong with women of faith in the Bible. I just decided we're going to, focus on these guys. But their lives teach us so much. Now, they are different characters. They are different personalities. They go through different situations. They are, living in different locations in different time periods. But what you see, that common thread in all of these men, is that God spoke to their life and they responded. Now, they were willing to listen. Now, remember that this week number 1 is about I choose to listen to God. God is always speaking to us. God is always wanting to send us messages. And it's up to us if we want to tap into it, if we want to listen. And the reason why we don't hear God's voice is because it could be we're not used to it. We just don't know. It's, something that we haven't developed yet. We haven't built that relationship yet. The first time I started talking with David on the phone when we weren't even friends. We were just like in leadership together and youth leadership. It was weird, super weird to talk to each other. It was more like, okay, we need to get this done. You're going to do this. I'm going to do this. Okay, God bless you. That was like the beginning of that relationship, right? With this person, I want to speak to them more. I have a desire to speak to them more. That's when it moved a level, right? Now it was, man, I can't wait to hear his voice. I'm learning to hear his voice. If he calls me, I know it's him now. Like, oh, this is David. And now we don't even question it if if he's calling me or I'm calling him. Now we know each other's voice. We know each other, even sometimes before we say something, like, I know what you're going to ask. I know what you're going to say. It's that we've built a relationship. And think about that with your relationship with God, that right now it might be hard to hear God because you haven't built that relationship yet. You're still on that, God, you're going to do this. I'm going to do this. It's like, I'm going to read the Bible. I'm going to pray. And it seems so ordinary. It seems so meticulous, routine-like. But then something happens. Then there's a desire. That desire begins to build. I want more of God. I want to hear him. Like, I want to know more about this stuff. If you've ever started to read the Bible from Genesis and you start to read the stories, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to know what else happens. Like, tell me more, God. I want to read about this. And so that desire begins to develop. And so it isn't so much a routine. It's more of, man, God, I need you. It's that friendship. It's, I want to hear from you. I want to know what you have to say. And I know you want to hear from me what I have to say. And so you see that relationship building right here in this first week with Abraham. God speaks to him and says, get out of your country, from your family. And those were pretty bold moves. And God had a reason for that. And when you start to read further on, you realize why God is saying that. But in that moment, Abraham had a choice. Again, it wasn't that God was not speaking. It was about if he was willing to listen. And we see that with the other characters, with the other men of faith, that it was about that willingness to listen. When we see Jacob's life, and I love this one, and I kind of think of it like when you're in that young adult phase, because Jacob is running away. He doesn't really have a home, and he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have money. He has nothing to his name. All he has is a prayer that his parents made for him and blessed his life. But that was about it. And, he gets to this moment where he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm running away from my life. And he makes a vow. He makes a promise there. And he says, God, if you're going to be with me, I know you're going to do this. And he hears God's voice in that. And God says to him, I will bring you back, right? I will bring you back to this place. I will show you, that what I've promised your life, that it's real. And, it's kind of like that when we're in that young phase and we're like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I don't know what career I'm going to choose. I don't know. This job isn't really working out. I don't really have a lot of money. And, that's the time where you say, you know what, I'm going to choose you, God. Even if I'm without, I'm going to choose you. And so we see this beautiful beginning with Jacob. And then we see with Moses where, he he's also in a position of running away, but he's running away from his problems, and God's like, no, I want you to go back. And Moses had a choice to listen and respond to God's voice. And, he could have walked away from that burning bush. He could have said, you know what, I'm not doing this. I've already been to Egypt. I've already been and done that. I've already gotten into mistakes. But he decided to stop. He decided to listen to God. He decided to believe God in that moment. And yes, you'll read on that a lot of things, and he had so many excuses, but God was with him through that journey. And the most important thing that stuck with Moses was, I am the great I am. And that's a part of the building that relationship, right? We're learning to listen to God's voice. We're learning to listen that, who is God and how does he see me? And then we go to First Samuel chapter 1, and this starts with Hannah. And this is a woman of faith. And you see this that, so before we get into Samuel's life, it's important to see Hannah, the mom, right? And I love how in the midst of what she was going through, such shame, um, you know, the other wife was making fun of her. She felt unloved, unwanted. She felt that you know something was wrong with her. In the midst of that anguish, she chose to run to God. Maybe that's the difference between men and women. Men are like running away, and women are running towards God. No, I'm kidding. Um, Hannah, she chose to go to the temple. She chose to take her problem to God. And I love how God, through the prophet Eli, says to her, um, it doesn't, God has heard your prayer. As you leave this place, know that God has heard your prayer. And I love how it says in verse 20, so it came to pass in the process of time that Hannah conceived. Wow. In the process of time. And see, again, going back to this building a relationship with God, that it's not about when the answer will come. It's that you are building something right now. It's that you are in the process of knowing God, about seeing yourself, and that God is bringing healing, that God is doing whatever he has to do. So, you worry about in this time listening to God, and God is going to do his due diligence because he is faithful to do what he needs to do according to his will over your life. And so it's a beautiful story of how Hannah um, um, believes in God. She didn't take that sadness with her home. She left it at the altar. She left it at the temple. I mean, she cried it out. She said, I can't even put into words. Like the priest is looking at me like I'm drunk, but I can't even. And sometimes our sadness is like that. It's so overwhelming that we can't even put it into words, and all we can do is just sob and cry before the Lord. But God even hears us in that, and he knows our prayer. He knows us. And today our Bible reading was on the life of Paul. And when you first read it in those first verses, and he says he was breathing threats. He was breathing murder, pretty much. And God still had a purpose with him. And the way that, God encountered him was he was shaken up. And, it was such a beautiful encounter moment that Paul had no other choice to say, you know what? Who are you? And what do what do I do from this point? and he chose to listen to him. He chose to walk it through because God had a purpose with him. So I want to leave you today with three things in thinking about how do I have unwavering faith in these moments of challenges, in these moments where, you know, we're all going through something difficult, and we're all responding to it differently. Our personalities are different. Maybe it's taken an emotional toll on you. Maybe you've been in that position where you're like, I just want to run away from this. I'm not dealing with that. No, I'm, everything's fine. What situation you're going through, no matter what situation comes up down the road, number one, it is possible to hear God. These men and women of faith show us that it is possible to hear God. It is possible to hear his voice, that God is speaking, that God is, always sending his messages, but it's up to us to learn how to discern his voice, to stop all the noise, all the distractions. And even just by you doing this and listening, this is you choosing to listen to God. Okay, I'm going to separate this time and I'm going to listen to God. By doing the reading plan or by praying, just by you doing that, you are saying, I choose you, God. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. I don't know what 10 years, 5 years down the road is going to look like, but I'm going to choose today to listen to you. It is possible to hear God. Number two, it's not up to your abilities, your strength, your title, your background. When you read about these men and women of faith, what did they have? What made them different from us? Nothing. If anything, some of them were worse off. I mean, look at Paul, breathing murderous threats. I'm pretty sure you're not breathing hatred and murderous threats to those around you, where you're like, I'm going to get up today and I'm going to, I'm going to go kill someone. You're not at that level, I hope, right? And I mean, they were average, common people like you and I. But what made them different, what set them apart, was that they chose to listen. That it didn't matter if their background was messy. It didn't matter if, they had nothing to their name, like Jacob. I mean, had nothing, but they chose to stop. They chose to listen. They chose to say, I choose to, even respond to this that I don't understand. I mean, how would you take that if God said to you, get out of your country, away from your family? How would you take that? They were all met up with a choice, and you have a choice. And it's not about the gifts that you have. It's not about the talents that you have. It's about the willingness to listen. It's not also about your problem. It's just about building that relationship with God. Yes, God wants to answer you. Yes, God wants to move in a miraculous way in your life. But more importantly, the fact that you are saved is the most important. And that's, about building that relationship with him, that you are in connection with him, that you have a friendship with him. And number three, listening opens up the opportunity to obey. See, if you never stop to listen, you will never know what God has on the other side. If you don't stop and pause to listen and respond to God, you won't ever know what's on that other side of that door. It's up to you. And right now, you could be like, I'm fine. Everything is good. The plans that I have, I've already created a checklist. I'm on track. And God has something greater. But you won't ever know until you stop and you listen to God. And so God's will leads to an open door. Isn't that what God did with Abraham when he says, get out? And um, you'll read later on what that led to, the promise that God had for his life. For Jacob, the promise that was over his life, what that led to with Moses. He would have never went to deliver or become, that blessing for the Israelites in that time if he didn't stop to listen. If Hannah didn't go and challenge herself to go pray, she would have never had Samuel. Think about that. She would have led her life in sadness, in tragedy, in ruin, in where her to the temple and go before God and choose to listen to God. And it was pretty bold for it to say, I'm gonna be here. I don't care if I look crazy, my prayer looks crazy, but I need you, God. And in the process of time, she saw the promise and that fulfilled with Samuel. And I don't want to get ahead, but Samuel became one of the greatest prophets. He would have never lived if Hannah, believing in that time that it was worth it to just stop and listen to God. With Paul, we would not have most of the New Testament today if it was not for Paul. If he did not stop, if he did not listen to God, if he didn't allow himself to encounter God and say, I've been living my life a wrong way. I thought I had a relationship with God. I thought I had it right, but I had it totally wrong. And, you could be so far from God and not even realize it. And you think you're doing everything right. And Paul had this come to Jesus moment. It's like, you know what? I've been living my life a wrong path. And the blessing that we have, he was used to bring the gospel to people that were not Jewish, to people that the Bible, the word, the term that is used is Gentiles. We now have this in our hands today because one man chose to listen to God. I repeat again, it is not a matter of your strength, your abilities, your talents, your title, your background. It's about you, your willingness to listen to God, to say, I'm here. God, whatever you have for me, I could have it totally wrong, or I could have some things that are right. Because some of us need to hear that from God. Some of us need to hear that, keep going. Some of us need to hear that from God, that affirmation, that love, and just to feel his presence and know that he's there. So I want you to take this with you today and continue with this 21-day reading plan that's going to be such a blessing to your life and challenge you, and to see with these men and women of faith how, because they chose to listen to God, that led them to unwavering faith. And all it takes is for you to listen to God and say, I want more of you. So thank you so much for joining. And this if you would like more support, an online community, an online sisterhood, and to grow intentionally, dive deeper, I have another lesson that's already on my membership site, and you can access it today or whenever you want to start the Heavenly Tale membership. And this is going to just go even deeper into the Word of God. This is, I'm so glad you're doing this challenge, and this is a great start. But if you want to go even more and you're like, I want everything that God has for me, I invite you to this Heavenly Tale membership. Message me to know more about it. When you join, you'll have access to tons of resources, and it's a joy for me to be able to get that out to you and just pour into your life, because this is not anything that I want to keep to myself. It's for you, it's for anyone. And that this is your takeaway today, that it is possible to hear God. And so it starts today in saying, I choose to listen to God. So thank you so much for joining and tuning in. And I hope that you have a wonderful weekend and celebrate Mother's Day. And if you're a mom, happy early Mother's Day. And, celebrate the moms in your life this weekend. So thank you so much for joining.